everyone, and welcome to today's DataVox webinar, Secure SD-WAN, presented by Fortinet. My name is Jessica, and I will be your moderator today. We are broadcasting this webinar through Cisco WebEx events, and the audio can be heard through your PC or by calling into the phone number listed and with the access code provided in your confirmation email or calendar invite for this event. Today's webinar is being recorded on behalf of DataVox, and participation in this event indicates your consent to being included in that recording. All attendees will receive an email with a link to the completed recording 24 to 48 hours post-event. If you have any questions for the presenters at any time during this presentation, you may submit those questions via the Q&A feature to the bottom right of your screen. This should already be turned on. Simply click Q&A and the text box will appear. Our panel will be responding to these questions throughout the presentation via text and verbally at the conclusion of the presentation. If you are in need of support or have a question not pertaining to today's topic, please utilize the chat feature and I will be happy to assist you. This feature is separate from the Q&A feature and can be turned on by clicking the chat bubble in the lower center of your screen. Now that we have reviewed the features of this webinar, we would like to start off today's presentation with a few words from our Director of Enterprise Sales, Chris Butler. Chris, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And hey, everybody, thank you for joining us today. So as we continue to work towards hopefully bringing interesting and helpful content to all of our customers, today we partner with Fortinet to evaluate and look at their SD-WAN offering. So SD-WAN continues to be an ever-growing challenge and necessity for all of our customers to understand. But not only that, our customers are tasked with doing more with less. So towards that, we want to dig into Fortinet's SD-WAN. They have an offering that has climbed quickly to the top 3 SD-WAN solutions that are out there on the Gartner Magic Quadrant. And that speaks a lot towards the work that they have done towards innovating and evolving their offering to an enterprise solution. So Fortinet also offers a unique aspect to the SD-WAN offering in that it's all part and packaged with the investments you make into the FortiGate appliance. So going back to the idea of doing more with less, Fortinet becomes an even more interesting discussion point as it offers a lot within their single solution. Not to say it's their only solution, they've got an expansive portfolio. But with that, let's jump into this. We're going to let Jaime take over and dive right in.
Thank you so much, Chris. Let me go ahead and switch over and make sure all is well. Hopefully everyone can hear me and see my screen. All right, so good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining. So we are going to go and talk a little bit about Fortinet's Secure SD-WAN. My name is Jaime Ortiz. I have been with Fortinet a little over 6 years now and seen the landscape change considerably. And right now, SD-WAN is the hot topic. And considering it has the ability to reduce overhead in regards to cost, it's becoming quite the buzzword right now considering what's going on out there. So let's dive in a little bit and see what it has to offer. So Fortinet pioneered the secure SD-WAN technology. We say secure because we have a FortiGate firewall that is a next-gen firewall, which has all the security stack built into it. We have the web filtering, the IPS, AD scanning, app control, also the automations that are built in for threat prevention. And we also have SD-WAN included in the box as well. So what we're seeing more and more out there is a lot of customers that look at our product and they go in with just an SD-WAN methodology or the project is deemed just SD-WAN. Turns out when they realize all the functionality that's built into the box, they start looking at their environments and going, well, you know what? We can actually replace our routers with these boxes too, so we can consolidate, which also leads to even more cost savings because they're not paying for additional devices that are being deployed out there, maintenance and all the overhead that goes with it. Not only that, right, because we have the SD-WAN functionality, it's allowing folks to take advantage of commodity internet or direct internet access to lower costs and improve performance going out to the cloud or SaaS or IaaS. It depends on how you want to leverage the technology, but it also works great when you want to just keep your MPLS circuits and just supplement it with an additional internet as well. But the point is, we talk about it as a secure SD-WAN because really you can't deploy SD-WAN without having a security conversation at the same time. So Gartner's Magic Quadrant, this is one of those things, right, where this is our bragging slide. So according to the industry, and really this is what we're seeing, more often than not, the 3 vendors out there are VeloCloud, Silver Peak, and us when we are doing battle for market share for SD-WAN, and Gartner seems to echo that same sentiment. Now, on the right-hand side of network firewalls, you'll see that really it's between us and Palo Alto more often than not when we talk about next-gen firewalls. But the point to take away here is that only one vendor is in both, and that's us, because we saw this as a natural progression of where the network was going to go, and SD-WAN it's just the answer, right? And it's really easy for a security company to add SD-WAN. It's not really easy for an SD-WAN company to add security. So we were ahead of the curve because we saw this coming down the pipe. So we are one of the top 3 vendors, right? And no, these are a bunch of rah-rah slides. You guys are going, yeah, I know. We're going to get to the good stuff in just a second. But just to kind of put it into perspective, our revenue growth is almost 46% quarter over quarter. So SD-WAN is not really one of these fad buzzwords that sometimes the industry presents itself with. It's the real deal. We're seeing growth. Actually, it's one of our fastest growing market segments for us at the moment, and it's where we find we're doing way more battle with competitors out there, more so than the next-gen firewall vertical. But as you can see here, right, we are one of the top 3, and our revenue growth is really growing by leaps and bounds. I think the last stat that I saw is it was well over 10% of our business now is solely an SD-WAN project. It's someone coming to us and saying, look, it's just SD-WAN. But when they find that we provide all these other functionalities inside the box, then they take a step back and go, wow, this is actually going to solve a whole bunch of my problems all in one go. All right, so let's kind of explain SD-WAN and kind of level the playing field for all of us. So there's primarily 4 architectures that are out there for SD-WAN. There's the native next-gen with advanced threat protection. There is the service chained approach. Then there's the add-on cloud secure gateway, and then there's the integrated firewall. So we play in this space. We're an SD-WAN product, but we have the whole security stack inside the box. So you can deploy the product, and your security is contained within it as well. So you can add your web filtering and your IPS controls and whatnot all on the same platform without having to do a different approach, which is the service chaining approach. Now, not to say that's a terrible approach, but we've seen that some customers go this route, and that's okay. And we play in all of these segments. That's the beauty about our product, right? Is that maybe you want to go with SD-WAN with vendor X, but then you want the security aspect, so you pull in Fortinet and deploy a FortiGate to complement the SD-WAN, or maybe it's the other way around. Either way, we play in that segment just with no problems, right? And it's what we've seen when we talk about service chaining. We see that they're usually leveraging like VNFs, right? It's more of a hypervisor approach where they're chaining these products inside that virtual world and then routing traffic accordingly. The add-on cloud secure web gateway down in the upper left, this is what we're seeing the SASE model of today, which is like your Zscalers and whatnot, where there's a cloud provider and you send your traffic out to them, they do the filtering for you, and then you egress out their data center out to the internet. Nothing wrong with that either. Again, we play with that market segment as well. We can be the SD-WAN engine and steer it wherever it needs to be steered. And in the bottom right quadrant, I really don't give this a whole lot of weight. An integrated firewall, that just doesn't cut it for anyone these days with just stateful packet inspection. That's a walk in a park to bypass. But it is leveraged by some of the vendors out there. But again, we are the whole stack in a single unit. So let's talk about SD-WAN use cases, right? So what we're seeing is folks that have MPLS, they look at it and they go, you know what? We're going to leverage SD-WAN. We're going to deploy a box at a remote site. And what we want to do is we want to go ahead and get an internet circuit to leverage, so that way we can have some type of automated failover. And what you end up doing here, right, is you run an overlay on top of these circuits. Now, in the SD-WAN world, there's overlay and underlay. These are really fancy terms that I think it was really a marketing thing, because it's really just a tunneling. Right? You're tunneling over the circuit. In our case, we're using IPsec for our tunneling. So your overlay is your tunnel. Your underlay is the native interface. So for instance, if this particular design here, what we're talking about, your underlay is when you go direct to internet. Your overlay is when you're running across the tunnel. So that being said, we see folks that leverage MPLS, that keep it because they want to dip their foot in the pool, and then they throw an internet circuit at the remote site, apply an SD-WAN engine, And then at that point, they have an automatic failover capability, but it's not just a failover in the traditional sense. It's intelligent. So the Fortinet SD-WAN is actually measuring the performance of these circuits. And depending on what your criteria is, whether it's latency or packet loss or jitter, we're then steering traffic to the appropriate circuit so that way we understand which is the best path to give the best overall performance. Now, a lot of times when you do this right, it allows you to go direct to internet as well. So you then, because you have this internet circuit, you're going directly to Azure or Office 365 or AWS, whatever it is for your SaaS platforms. But that being said, you also go direct to internet from the site, because the traditional models were, I'm going to backhaul my traffic over MPLS, and then when I hit the data center or the DC or HQ, I'm going to egress out of there and then go to the internet because my security stack was in that location. It was my centralized approach. But I think as we all know today, right, we found that working from home, a lot of these applications performing better because our home internet is faster than what the office can provide. So SD-WAN is providing this opportunity for you to go, you know what, you can drop maybe a 100 meg circuit or 200 meg circuit for pennies on the dollar at your locations, let them go direct out to internet. We've got you covered in the security stack. Keep MPLS until you feel comfortable. But once you feel comfortable, then you can pick up the phone and say, hey, Mr. Provider, I don't really need the MPLS portion anymore. Can you give me DIA or direct internet access, which means I don't need the tagging and the routing. Just give me internet, and I'm going to handle all that myself now. And then your sites get converted one by one. You build your overlays, your full mesh capability and whatnot, and you've done your transition with as least downtime as possible while improving performance for all of your applications and increasing your security posture. So what does it look like when you're setting up our product, right? So it's pretty straightforward, actually. You just go into our network and our SDWAN interfaces, and then you enable them, and then start adding the interfaces as you see fit. Now, a FortiGate firewall can support 256 interfaces inside the SD-WAN engine. To be honest, the most I've ever seen is 5. Right? Most of the time, folks are MPLS, 2 different ISPs, maybe a 3G, 4G connection, and 5G. I know it's coming up. And then maybe some proprietary link that they have, so maybe some type of telemetry or something like that. But again, it scales just fine. It's not really an issue. Now, when you do this creation, you have some configuration that you can do. So we've actually applied a feature where you can apply cost to each individual interface so that you can steer the traffic based on least cost routing. Now, again, the SD-WAN engine is going to be measuring the circuits, but you can now play a part in how you want to direct traffic based on the current SLAs and if they're working within the parameters which you've configured beforehand. Of course, we have a real-time graphic usage. You can see here a lot of times we see this thrown up in the SOC and the NOC, which shows you, okay, all these interfaces that are being leveraged, what's the utilization of each, and it's real time, right? And you can drill down bandwidth or volume or session. It just depends on what's important to you. But we see this throw up. It's kind of eye candy, but it is a really quick way to look up and go, hey, why is WAN 2 handling all the traffic all of a sudden? It should be WAN 1. So also with our SD-WAN monitoring, this is our interface in our 6.4 code that we've recently released. So it gives you an overall view of what's going on with your particular SD-WAN. Now this is on box. Now don't forget, this is also viewable on the FortiManager, which is our centralized management platform. And I'll talk to you a little bit about that in a second. But really what you get to see here is you can see your SD-WAN metrics. You can see if your circuits are falling in or out of SLA. You also can see the route tables. Now remember, you can leverage advanced routing inside SD-WAN. So you can use BGP or OSPF so that you can manipulate routes. You can use route tags. You can apply all sorts of route maps. You can do AS prepending, all the things that you're used to doing with your router. And again, I reiterate the point, you can replace your router with a FortiGate. You don't need to be doing double duty. But you can get an update on where the routes are, and which routes are available, and if you have routes that are dropping out because of particular circuit utilization, or if the performance is dropping, right, because it's all dynamic. You also get a good look at bandwidth utilization, as well as the overlay tunnel status. So it lets you know what's the utilization on those tunnels. And, of course, you're correlating this with the SLAs to find out if it's out of SLA. Obviously, the utilization is going to drop significantly, but you'll probably see increase in latency or packet loss because of that. And also, we have the ability to do device inventory. And this is kind of something that a lot of folks don't realize that we do. But when you use a FortiGate firewall, it's identifying the devices that's flowing traffic through it. So you can actually take a look at your remote sites and see particular devices flowing through the FortiGate. And if you wanted to, through the interface, you can actually quarantine them, or you can automate the quarantining as well, depending on if you're leveraging our indicator of compromise subset within the FortiAnalyzer. But this device inventory comes in handy because it also helps identify if you've got top talkers, where they're going. Maybe there's too much bandwidth utilization by someone that's hogging bandwidth. But it's imperative, and it works with our fabric. So you get to see this across your entire organization. It's not just one individual site. You get a global view. So I get this question all the time. Well, can you do full mesh connectivity? Yes, we can. We call it 80 VPN. So what this does, right, is in the SD-WAN architecture, the hub site, and you can have multiple hub sites, obviously, it acts like a route reflector. So if Spoke 1 wants to talk to Spoke 2, it will actually send the traffic originally to the hub, and the hub will then say, you know what, there's a faster way for you to get there. Here's the IP address. Why don't you go ahead and dynamically build a tunnel yourself and go spoke to spoke instead of hub and spoke? Now, these circuits in 6.4 are actually dynamically monitored as well. So if you build this dynamic tunnel across, let's say you're doing a hybrid model of MPLS and internet, and let's say the MPLS circuit starts having congestion issues and you're transmitting traffic from spoke to spoke, we're actually monitoring that now. We'll go, you know what? It's faster for you guys to talk over the internet. Let's go ahead and switch over. And it switches automatically, builds the tunnel, and moves over. We do demonstrations of this quite frequently, actually almost every week. And I can tell you from the demonstrations, we see at most a small latency increase as the switchover takes place. Rarely do we see a packet drop. That's how fast the switchover is. Now, the links, again, are dynamically monitored, but they're also dynamically created and torn down. So they don't stay up. So we're not chewing through resources just because we built a tunnel. And that's user configurable, right? You can say 15 minutes go down, 60 minutes go down, 5 minutes, whatever it is you're looking for. You can tune that to, depending on how much traffic is being used between the spokes. A lot of times we see this come up, I would say 9 times out of 10 it's because voice comes into the picture. So SD-WAN really isn't all that great without a zero-touch deployment model. Now here, I'm going to be one of these guys that's painfully honest. The industry calls it zero touch. I kind of call it light touch. The reason I call it light touch is because a lot of times you're going to put an IP address on your box. Now, maybe you don't. If you don't have to, if you're going to plug your box into a traditional cable modem and DHCP out the IP address, then yes, you've gone pretty much close to zero touch deployment. It'll then have the ability to phone back to FortiCloud, and FortiCloud will then relay the IP address on how to get connected to the FortiManager, which is the centralized management platform. Once it gets that information, then it builds a secure tunnel to the manager, says, here I am. Do you have a configuration for me that I need to use to build? And that process can be automated to where you pre-stage the devices. Once they're pre-staged and they check in, then automatically they are imported into the manager, and then the configuration gets pushed out to the device, and it gets built, and it's off and running. To put our money where our mouth is, right, we sent a load of FortiGates over to NSS Labs over in Austin, Texas. And what we did, we said, all right, we need you to validate what it looks like to deploy sites. So they set up a mock 75-site office, right, 75 locations for a particular company. After they ran it, they produced their report and published it. They showed once templates are set up inside FortiManager, deployment was around 6 minutes per site to deploy. And this was full security stack along with SD-WAN, and I can't stress that enough. One thing is, we got SD-WAN up and running, but we're also talking about we deployed web filtering and our IPS templates as well. All of that in around 6 minutes. That says a lot about us and what we stand behind. We also have the ability to use playbooks if you want to. Right? Ansible seems to be a very popular platform these days. So you can script all of this if you want, to where we have our APIs that are open both on the FortiGates and the FortiManager, to where you can direct connect to them and you can launch all sorts of functionality through your scripting engine if that's something that you want to do to deploy. And we're seeing an uptick in that quite a bit. And of course, we do config backups with revision history and whatnot. So centralized management, you create a template for SD-WAN. And this is one of my favorite things. And if any of you have ever done a tour of duty in desktop support, I did many years ago. I don't want to say how old I am, but it's been a while. you had a machine that you built everything you wanted, apps and all, and then you imaged it, and that was considered your gold image. And then you used an imaging server and pushed those images out to the desktops so you could load, 30, 40, 50, 100 desktops simultaneously. Many of you had those wonderful battles with multicast. I have tons of stories. But you were able to deploy that on the fly. So we've done something very similar. You can build one FortiGate firewall in your lab exactly how you want to use it, and then you import it into the FortiManager. When you do that, you then import it as a template, and it will automatically create the SD-WAN rules, the performance SLAs for you, the interfaces and whatnot, and now you have a template ready for creation to push out and just replicate to every single site. Now, of course, there can be some customization if you want to, because maybe some sites have one-off configurations. You could do that as well. And again, the firewall rules and the next-gen capabilities as well are configured, and you are pushing these out. So your web filtering, your IPS, all that, this is all part of the template. And then you can automate this to a point to where you can get it almost hands-off by just building a single device in your lab and then replicating over and over. If you're lucky enough to be doing a forklift or a brand new implementation, this is pretty darn easy. Of course, some of us are having to navigate around very interesting networks and configurations that are legacy type systems. So sometimes you have to get a little more creative, but the point here is that you can use the templates and then make your one-off config changes to adhere to whatever sites have their, what we call, diversity in their configurations. Now, the other thing I want to mention with centralized management, because of the security fabric, right, with Fortinet, you are now able for the FortiManager to connect to the FortiAnalyzer, which is another product which is a log collection device. Now, I get this question all the time. No, FortiAnalyzer is not a SIEM. We have another product that is FortiSIEM. The analyzer is just for Fortinet products. The SIEM will ingest from everyone and their grandma. This is just for FortiGates, right? So the analyzer can actually be managed by the manager, and then when you log into the manager, you've achieved a single pane of glass. And I know some of you out there are rolling your eyes, but trust me, it really is a single pane of glass. Because now your logs and reporting and everything are in the single login for the manager, not to mention the monitoring aspects of SD-WAN. So Fortinet also, we pride ourselves on what we call the SD branch. And this one is what's really selling like hotcakes because it's a true consolidation. So what it is, right, and just to kind of go over again what's included in a FortiGate. So by default, a FortiGate firewall, no extra licensing. You buy a FortiGate and you go and buy the, you buy the subscription service, or you buy the service for hardware maintenance, right? Your support in case the box decides to die on you or something. Okay, that box alone comes with SD-WAN, comes with application control, firewalling, and VPN. That box already comes. SD-WAN is not an extra charge. You don't have to go back to the well and ask for more money. So if you just want to do SD-WAN, you're like, you know what, I'm not going to do the security aspect. I'm going to use it on somewhere else. Fine. You can just get a FortiGate by itself. It's included. But if you get the whole stack, right, this is everything that's included in it. And what a lot of people don't realize is our FortiGates have a wireless controller built in them as well. So you can buy our access points and deploy them at the branch. And we also have our own switching line, which is also managed by the FortiGate. So you have a single interface you log into, and now you have control of wireless all the way down to layer 1 on your switching, your next-gen firewall, your SD-WAN, plus you have the ability to grow that switching infrastructure if you needed to. So basically, you can take, let's say it's 5 U's of equipment that you have at your location. You can shrink it down to 2 U's if you want. Less power, less overhead, reducing operational costs, simplifying the deployments, automating the deployments, and simplifying day-to-day management, all underneath the SD-WAN moniker or project. So it's like a fringe benefit that most folks don't even realize is there. And let's not forget, we do SSL decryption on the box as well. I can't stress this enough. I see this every day because I see the reports. 87% of our customers' traffic is encrypted. Another way to say it is you can only see 13% of what's coming or going with your IPS unless you're decrypting. So a lot of you out there, I'm sure, have gone, you know what, honey, this sounds great and all that, but I'm using the SASE model. I have an SD-WAN device, and I'm sending it out to a cloud gateway that's going to scrub everything for me. I'm good. You are good. But what happens when spoke A starts talking to spoke B? What's scanning that traffic? And again, because the FortiGate has the security stack built into it, along with an IPS and AV scanner, you're actually able to inspect that traffic from spoke to spoke without having to send it out somewhere like a traditional hub and spoke model and hairpin it and bring it back. And these are advantages that a lot of folks don't realize it until they get knee-deep into their SD-WAN project and go, oh, security just leveraged a requirement on, they have an IPS project coming up because now we got to deploy it because before we had 2 internet circuits in the entire company, now we have 200 because all the sites are now leveraging SD-WAN. That's a big paradigm shift for most organizations. So what does it look like? Just like this. Essentially, it's a FortiGate firewall. It's not a proprietary cable. It's just a Ethernet cable. You plug it into the switch. You plug it into the FortiGate. We have a proprietary protocol that identifies it and looks at it and goes, okay, it's a switch. I'm going to manage it. And now you have the ability to carve out VLANs, configure dynamic VLAN assignment, assign. We also have a NAC solution that integrates with this as well. So that way you can do your dynamic VLAN assignment. You can automate downing ports to prevent east-west traffic if you have a possible breach, or maybe it's just destined as interesting traffic before you actually dig in. But then on top of that, the switches themselves also are PoE, so then you can plug in the APs and you have the options of having them tunnel all the way back to the gate over CAPWAP, or if you want, you can have them in bridge mode, so they just drop out to the local VLAN and they're off and running. The switches are capable of layer 3 or layer 2. But when you attach them to the firewall, you now have a firewall engine inspecting that traffic. So yes, if you have the right size box, you can actually run layer 2 traffic through an IPS engine, which is a huge deal, especially in some environments where we see like PCI or high trust, where they're being mandated by certain requirements in order to pass their audits. The switches, let me tell you, we've got a port size for everybody, right? As far as port count as well as interface, but they go up to 100 gig on the interface side. And the FortiGates themselves, depending on the FortiGate themselves, they have 100 gig interfaces. The one you see at the top here, that is our 100F. It has 10 gig interfaces already that you can use for the links between the distribution points. But the whole point is, you've got this SD-WAN platform now where you've consolidated, simplified, you've gained SD-WAN, you've gained security, you now have insight between your sites. And on top of it, you've reduced operational costs, and I promise you that's going to become a topic more and more as the days are progressing, because the economy is going to take a little while to get back to where it was. So every dollar is going to count. So we see it as this is the best thing we got to do, right? We got to start making our dollars count. So when we said single pane of glass, remember, and some of you out there rolled your eyes, maybe grabbed a potato chip, or you switched back over to looking at Amazon for the Memorial Day sales. We really do mean single pane of glass. And trust me, I was one of those guys out there that was like, oh, here we go again. I want to puke every time someone says it. We have. So when you log into a FortiManager, you actually get a global view of your SD-WAN deployment. Excuse me. That SD-WAN deployment, then you can drill down onto it and see which devices, when they turn orange, that means one of the interfaces has gone out of SLA. You drill down, you can see which one's out of SLA. And when, okay, well, maybe we've got something going on with that circuit. You can then begin an investigation if you want, and you can also get an SNMP trap or whatnot on there if you want to be alerted. But then you can drill down also into the security aspect. Go, let's see what's going on at that site. Again, per site or a global view of all the sites. You can see what's happening on your network. Then you can drill down if you're leveraging the switch aspect for our SD branch. You can actually drill down to the switch itself and change VLANs, make sure it's in the right VLAN. Maybe they're in the wrong port. Down, up, down ports, however you see fit. And then you can get a view of the application usage as well, which applications which are unsanctioned, then you can run reports about them, send them up the tree and go, okay, you know what, we've got so-and-so users still using, maybe they're using Dropbox and you guys standardize on Box, or maybe you're using Office 365. But you get this global viewability through the interface, as well as because we're grabbing this data because we're leveraging the SD-WAN as well. And then we can also look at the SD-WAN interfaces and see the percent utilization on each interface and whether they're in or out of SLA. And all of this is real time, right? As you do this and click on the monitor segment side before the manager, it's actually querying the devices in real time. So it's the latest and greatest what you see in there. So you get an idea of what's going on inside your environment. So like I said, when I said single pane of glass, I really do mean it. You've got that visibility. Now keep in mind, to achieve single pane, you're coupling it with a FortiAnalyzer, which is ingesting the logs for you, and the manager then is pulling that data from the analyzer, and it's also pulling the data from the FortiGates via API to get you that real-time information. So 8 reasons to choose Fortinet. This is the end of the slideshow, and these are the things. So those of you out there, if you're watching, take a screenshot, take a mental image. But these are the top 8 reasons to use this, right? So number 1, obviously, security is built in. It's key for the branch. If you're looking at SD-WAN, you're going to be talking about security at the same time. So you're going to be talking about either SASE or you can do it on-prem. One of the ways you're going to have to figure it out, but you're going to have to look at security. We've got that covered. SD-WAN is not an extra charge. I can't stress that enough. You're getting so much bang for your buck when you look at it that way, especially when you start to compare us to the competition. There is a significant cost delta between us and a lot of folks. We can handle 256 circuits. Some of our competition can only do 2. We can handle plenty. And again, different types too, 3G, 4G, commodity internet, MPLS, whatever it is. We have our own SD-WAN module. Well, it's not really an SD-WAN module. What's called a FortiExtender, which allows you to put 2 different SIM cards in them, and you can have Verizon and AT&T, and it will show up as an SD-WAN interface. It looks just like an AP. You put it up on the wall, run it, power over Ethernet, you're off and running, and now you have 4G connectivity, and you can add it to the mix. Now, that's not a last or break glass interface. That can be included in the SD-WAN engine. You can use it all day long. Our centralized management. So theoretically, we have hit 100,000 devices on a FortiManager. We did that in the virtual world to prove what we're capable of. But for customers that I've actually worked with and seen in the field, I've seen over 15,000 devices managed off a single manager. So scalability is not a problem. Zero-touch provisioning, or I like to call it light-touch provisioning. We do that, right? So we can do it zero-touch if you DHCP, light-touch if you got to type an IP. Whenever folks come to us go, well, can you handle such and such traffic? Yeah, we can. We have devices that'll scale to 400 gigs of traffic throughput if that's what you're looking for. Haven't run into that yet, but, you know, we can do it. And then lastly, why are you buying a router? Right? There really isn't a reason anymore. We can do pretty much everything the router does, so you can consolidate that, not only lower your overhead, but improve your security standpoint as well. So lastly, we have an SD-WAN CTAP. I just want to throw it out there. If you want to see what the FortiGate can see, and we'll generate a report for you, we'll ship a box to your location. You don't have to do anything. It's pre-configured. You just plug it into a SPAN port or a tap. It's not in line. It's not going to manipulate traffic. It's just going to watch it, record it. We take those logs in, and we'll generate a report for you that you can use for making your sale to senior management or whomever else that needs to see it. We do all this free of charge, not a single cent to you. You can fire it up. We'll do all the heavy lifting, and then you've got a nice report, and it will also show you threats that it sees, not to mention how much traffic is going direct to internet. So that way you can take advantage of SD-WAN. It's easy to get started, so it's on our partner portal. You just log in, click a couple buttons, and we ship a box. And that is it. Thank you all so much for the attention. I think now we have some time for Q&A, if I believe.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jaime. Chris, Brian, do you see any questions in the Q&A?
We do have a couple questions. Let's see. One of them is, how is this sold? Is it a VM, appliance, or cloud?
Yeah, so the answer is yes. All right, so we do it as a VM on-prem or VMs. We're in the marketplace on Amazon, Azure, Google. We're actually in Alibaba and Oracle as well. There's also physical appliances too. Now, obviously, the advantages with physical appliances is that they get to leverage the ASICs or the hardware acceleration that we have built ourselves and customized because we build our own chipsets, and that's what makes us so fast. But yeah, we have desktop models all the way to ones you rack inside data centers that require lots of cooling because they can do all sorts of fun stuff. And to be honest, right, we're seeing an uptick in folks' their interest in the desktop models with this work-at-home paradigm shift that we're seeing thanks to the pandemic. I shouldn't say thanks, but because of the pandemic. So, yeah, we got a size for every. We got a size for every challenge.
So I see another question out there. It says, I currently have a 100E firewall. Is it compatible with SD-WAN?
Sure is. Yeah, the 100 Echoes are, actually it's a really nice box. We do have the 100Fs or Foxtrots, but the Echoes are great platforms. It is should already be included in the OS, and it's not an extra charge. So you should be able to go in there and just turn it on, and you're off and running.
Another question out here says, what's your head-end box capacity?
So head ends, that depends on the size, right? So the head end, or what we say, right, the boxes that are going to be at the hub, which is, it's performing like the route reflector duties. It scales, well beyond any limit that I've met with a customer. I can share the link for the product support page, but I mean, we easily surpass 50,000 devices to be able to terminate into the head end. But it's, I mean, like I said, it scales even bigger, right? We've got some massive ones. We even go to chassis size if you need to. I've got kind of a funny story. We had this one deal that we were doing, and it was in Japan. I had no idea how much karaoke was so popular in Japan. Like, even so much, like, there's karaoke at gas pumps or in the gas stations, like what you would see like in Nevada, how some there's slots. There's karaoke machines. Well, the whole point of the thing was they needed a solution that could build VPN tunnels quickly and support them, and it was insane, their requirements, right? They were saying we need to bring up, possible scenarios were 1,000 to 7,000 tunnels per minute, and we were the only vendor that could do it with our chassis solution. So trust me, we scale really well in that aspect.
We have a few more here. One question again pertaining to size. Can small FortiGates be updated to use SD-WAN?
So they can, but there was a change with some of our smaller models. And Brian, you can keep me honest here, but I think the 60 Delta model, the older models, right? That's before the E and the F, obviously. The 60 Delta models were not going to be able to support 6.2 code or 6.4, which is our latest, right? But the 6.0 code does have SD-WAN, but with every iteration that we release, we're adding more and more feature sets. So yes, the smaller ones can do it, but you'll need to make sure, depending on which model you have, if it's an Echo or a Foxtrot, you're good. If it's a Delta model, you need to cross-reference to make sure where the FortiOS is going to cut off. And I can tell you, for the most part, you're going to be locked in the 6.0 code if you're on the older Delta models.
And just to make sure I heard that correctly, did you reference the FortiGate 60?
Yes, 60 Delta or D, the 60D. It'll run SD-WAN just fine, but the ability to upgrade to the newer OSs is going to be limited because of its chipset, because of the advances that we're making in the OS. But you're not dead in the water. You still have SD-WAN, but you're not going to get the latest and greatest features.
And just to be clear, the 60 Delta is a product that we no longer sell. So if this is a net new purchase, you'd be looking at the 60F, which does have the dedicated SD-WAN chip in it.
So along those lines, the secondary question here was related to the FortiWi-Fi 50E and the Wi-Fi 60E. Will they support SD-WAN?
They will. We're talking about the little boxes with antennas, I'm assuming. Not a bad box. What we're seeing, some folks are liking that for the home office kind of setup, right, where you can just sit it on your desk and you have Wi-Fi right there, and then plus all the next-gen capabilities. And believe it or not, we're having companies ask us about, okay, SD-WAN at people's homes because certain power users need it. So it's coming in handy because a lot of them have, Comcast or Xfinity for going out one way, and then maybe they go get Verizon DSL out of their phone line, or they go and leverage the 4G, the Fort extender, and they pop in a SIM chip, and they have path diversity because they need it. So, yeah, it's covered.
So shifting gears a little bit, what do the reports look like that report on the SD-WAN, SLA, and metrics? Is there something we can show?
Unfortunately, I don't have a report I can show right now, but our newest code, right, our 6.4 code has made a substantial investment into the SD-WAN reporting structure so that you can actually run reports that'll give you, you can go back days, right, and say, okay, show me what the performance has been like on these links. We've had some customers that like to leverage it so that they can call up the carrier and go, you know what, you said that this circuit would give me X, and here's a report for the past couple of days, and that's not what I'm getting, right? It gives you a little more substance instead of, you know, the typical "you guys suck." You actually can produce reports that, you know what, I'm not seeing what you're telling me, and I'm also flipping over to my other circuit from the other carrier because you guys are not maintaining your end of the bargain. But unfortunately, I don't have a report to show you. But that's a great thing I will make a note of to include in a prezo, because that is good.
And we can take that down as an action item to follow up with the question that was asked and the person who asked it.
Oh, great.
Are we seeing any other Q&As? Brian, Chris, do you see anything on your end?
Not from my side, thank you.
Okay, great.
Nope, looks like we got them all.
Okay, awesome. Well, that concludes our session then. We want to thank you all for joining today's webinar. As a reminder, the recording link for today's session will be available in the next 24 to 48 hours. If you enjoyed today's session and would like to hear more, we do offer new webinars weekly. Please check our DataVox website for more information on upcoming sessions. And as always, we'd love to hear your feedback on our events. Once this webinar has ended, you will be redirected to a survey page. If you could please take a moment to complete the survey before closing out your browser, we'd greatly appreciate it. That concludes our session for today. Thank you again to Jaime and Brian and Fortinet team for a great presentation, and thank you all for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.